Hi everyone, welcome to the Azure Arc-enabled Infrastructure Technical Series on unlocking the Azure experience at the edge with Azure Stack HCI. I'm Daniel Lee, Product Management Lead on the Azure Edge Infrastructure team at Microsoft, and I'm excited to share with you how you can modernize your edge infrastructure and the workloads running on it with Azure Arc. Let's jump right in. Azure is a platform and cloud infrastructure to run your workloads. It also consists of services to build modern apps on, and Azure also provides the management solutions to secure, operate, and govern your workloads. But Azure isn't just limited to the cloud. You may have regulations to comply with, specific requirements for application latency, or other connectivity requirements. Whichever your reason, it's clear that hybrid deployments are here to stay. You're going to run workloads in the cloud and outside of the cloud on the edge, and in both cases, you want the benefits that the cloud provides. And that's why we built Azure Arc. Azure Arc is a bridge that extends the Azure platform so you can build applications and services with the flexibility to run across data centers, the edge, and cloud environments. Azure Arc also provides a consistent development, operations, and security model for your workloads. You can use the same tools, the same security and governance technologies to manage your infrastructure and your workloads. And these workloads and applications can run on a wide range of Arc-enabled infrastructure, including Azure Stack HCI, Windows Server, and Windows IoT. Today we'll be focusing on Azure Stack HCI, but keep in mind that the benefits of Azure through Azure Arc can be applied to a cluster of server-class machines running Azure Stack HCI, all the way down to desktop machines and IoT devices. Azure Stack HCI is an edge infrastructure solution from Azure, inherently designed to be that extension of Azure to the edge. Azure Stack HCI is available on hundreds of certified hardware solutions from a vendor of your choice and has the flexibility and power to run any Arc-enabled workload in your edge locations. Then, through Azure Arc, you can use the same Azure services that you use to secure, govern, and manage your cloud resources to manage the HCI infrastructure and your Arc-enabled workloads running on HCI. HCI is designed and built with Azure Arc integrated right out of the box, so you can get the Azure experience at the edge through a seamless, simple experience. In today's Arc-enabled Infrastructure Technical Series, we have almost 20 individual sessions on topics on Arc VMs, Azure Kubernetes Service, Azure Services for managing your infrastructure, and automating management tasks with Azure. Each session is about 10 minutes long, packed with demos and technical depth on how things work under the hood, and are designed so that there are specific takeaways to help make the most out of your Arc-enabled infrastructure. For the next few minutes, I'd like to give you a peek preview into each of these sessions. We'll look at the features across 4 different themes, starting with creating and managing VMs on Azure Stack HCI, just like you would in Azure, with Arc VM Management. With Azure Arc VM Management on HCI, you can create and manage VMs from the Azure portal with the same experience you get in Azure. You can create VMs, you can start and stop VMs, you can add and edit memory, CPU, virtual disks, and network interfaces. You can also use Azure Marketplace VM images, just like you do for Azure VMs in the cloud, giving you a consistent experience across the cloud and edge. And this isn't just limited to the portal UI experience, but also possible through Azure CLI, PowerShell, and ARM templates, providing a truly consistent experience. In addition, once you provision those VMs as Arc VMs, this automatically projects your VMs into Azure, which then enables you to use Azure services to manage your guest VMs running on the edge as well. In one of our first sessions today, we'll demo the new Arc VM Management setup experience. Setting up Arc VM Management previously has been a complex task, requiring more than 20 commandlets in total, more than 10 input parameters, and troubleshooting has been difficult. We'll show you how we are simplifying the experience and making it more reliable by making it just 2 PowerShell commandlet calls to set up. Next, we're continuing to bring in Azure consistency by supporting role-based access control for VMs running on HCI, and you can have full admins, VM admins, and readers to enable self-service VM management. We're also continuing to enhance features for Arc VM Management based on customer feedback, and we'll be adding static IP support for scenarios such as VMs running as domain controllers, web servers, or email servers, and for firewall configuration that require static IP addresses. We have all these great capabilities to manage Arc VMs on HCI, but how do I get existing VMs onto HCI in the first place? For this, we will be releasing Azure Migrate for HCI soon, a simple, agentless solution with minimal downtime, and which will support migration from Hyper-V servers first, then from VMware as well. Finally, if you need a secure remote desktop experience, you can use Azure Virtual Desktop in Azure. But if you need to run on-premises to meet data residency or performance requirements, you can also run Azure Virtual Desktop on HCI. It supports Windows 11 and Windows 10 multi-session, and even when you are running Azure Virtual Desktop on HCI, the Virtual Desktop Infrastructure, the VDI, is all cloud-based, so you don't need to manage the VDI infrastructure yourself, and you get a single management experience for Azure Virtual Desktop in the cloud and on the edge. In one of our sessions today, we'll show you how you can deploy and set up Azure Virtual Desktop on HCI. Next, let's talk about scaling Kubernetes to Arc-enabled infrastructure. Azure Kubernetes Service is designed to work on any Arc-enabled edge infrastructure, not just Azure Stack HCI, but also Windows IoT and Windows Server. For HCI, we have AKS on HCI, and for Arc-enabled Windows IoT and Windows Server, you can run AKS Edge Essentials. We'll show you a demo of how you can deploy and connect a Kubernetes cluster running on Windows IoT Edge using AKS Edge Essentials in Azure Arc. Next, let's look at how you can secure, govern, and manage edge infrastructure at scale. Azure provides a wide range of services to manage workloads and infrastructure, such as Azure Monitor, Defender for Cloud, Azure Policy, and Update Management Center. Through Azure Arc, you can extend these services to your edge infrastructure to manage both your cloud resources and edge infrastructure through a single set of tools. And these tools are optimized to help manage at scale, especially for edge infrastructure that may be distributed across your factories, retail stores, or other edge locations. We'll show you how you can use HCI Insights in Azure Monitor to collect logs and performance counters to get this monitoring insights into your cluster nodes, storage, and VMs. Then you can view and monitor this all through the Azure portal, along with monitoring for your applications and Azure resources such as Azure VMs, containers, storage, and more. We'll also do a deep dive to further customize your monitoring experience by collecting additional logs, building cluster queries to look for certain criteria such as high CPU or memory usage, and then creating custom alerts with those cluster queries. We're also making HCI secure out of the box by setting Microsoft's recommended security configuration for the Azure Stack HCI OS. Then, by integrating with Microsoft Defender for Cloud, you can continuously monitor and ensure your cluster stays in a secure and compliant state. If you are running VMs on your HCI or Windows Server edge infrastructure, you can mitigate disaster scenarios and plan for business continuity with Azure Site Recovery. Using Azure Site Recovery, you can replicate your on-premises VMs running on the edge to Azure to protect from disaster scenarios. We'll show you how deployment and configuration of Azure Site Recovery can be easily done from the Azure portal with just a few clicks. Then, for in-depth management of Azure Stack HCI or Windows Server, for things such as managing cluster nodes, volumes, drives, and network configuration, you can use Windows Admin Center. Windows Admin Center is now fully integrated into Azure, and we are designing and building Windows Admin Center as a portal-first experience. In one of our sessions, we'll do a deep dive on how Windows Admin Center in Portal works under the hood. Next, troubleshooting an issue on your Azure Stack HCI cluster with Azure support can be challenging, especially if this requires collecting logs, sending them to Microsoft, analyzing them only to find out something is missing or additionally required, and this can result in going back and forth several times. We've reinvented the support experience where you can grant remote access to Azure support in a secure and transparent way where you have full control over what can be accessed and when. One thing that almost all of these integrations I mentioned have in common is that there is an agent installed on the HCI cluster or Arc-enabled server that facilitates the communication between the cluster server and Azure. These are all built as extensions to the Arc agent and can be pushed down installed from Azure to give you a seamless onboarding experience without ever leaving the Azure portal. In one of our sessions, we'll explain how Arc extensions work and how they can be managed from the portal UI in your web browser, as well as through PowerShell for automating and managing at scale. Finally, many of these Azure services for managing your edge infrastructure require connectivity to Azure, and each service requires different endpoints, and configuring these endpoints and managing the whitelist in your firewall can be challenging. We're making this easier with a connectivity checker tool you can run in PowerShell or Windows Admin Center. This tool will check all required endpoints, tell you which endpoints were successfully reachable or not, so that you can easily troubleshoot connectivity issues. The last thing I'd like to talk about today is automation. When managing from Azure, the web browser-based portal experience isn't the only way to manage your edge infrastructure. When automating a complex set of actions or making a configuration change across many servers or clusters at scale, scripting can be much more effective. We'll do a deep dive into automation and show you how you can use Azure CLI automation to automate cluster management tasks such as setting up Azure Monitor for HCI clusters or for turning on and off a cluster setting. Last but not least, I mentioned how you can use Arc VM management to create and manage VMs on Azure Stack HCI, similar to how you create VMs running in Azure. We'll take this a step further and show you how you can automate this process by using Azure Bicep to create VM images and VMs, then set up GitHub Actions to deploy VM images and VMs running on HCI, all from the cloud. That's all I had for today. As a quick recap, using Azure Arc as the bridge that extends Azure to your edge locations running Arc-enabled infrastructure, you can bring the power of Azure to the edge to help you manage your edge infrastructure and run your workloads. I hope you find the sessions helpful and valuable in unlocking your Azure experience at the edge. Thank you.